بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I got an email from a student of mine, I believe he is in Sweden, in which he asked me, can you kindly record a video on the importance of the year 1917? And here's my response. That in the Quran, I don't recall now which surah it is, Allah has asked us, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وذكرهم بأيام الله, and remind them that they might ponder and reflect over the days of Allah. So we have a duty to check upon the movement of history and how the days of Allah unfolded in the movement of history. One of the most dramatic of all of the days of Allah in history was that day when Musa alayhi salam, the Prophet Moses, was told, take your rod and strike the water. And the Red Sea parted. And when the Red Sea parted, the Israelite people were able to cross on dry land to Sinai. But when Pharaoh and his armed forces attempted to cross on that dry land with mountains of water on both sides, a part had been made by Allah when he struck the water. Then the waters came down and he was drowned. That was one of the most important of the days of Allah. And in the previous recording, we pointed out that the story did not end when he and his army were all drowned, but that when he was drowning, that something happened, that he realized that he was not God. Before this, he was proclaiming, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la, I am the Lord Most High. But he realized that, no, it's wrong, I am not the Lord God, but the God of Moses and the Israelite people. And he declared his faith in the God of the Israelite people. To which Allah then responded, and CNN was not there to record this event, it's recorded only in the Quran and nowhere else. That Allah then said to him, now, today, Pharaoh, today you proclaim your faith in me, and before this you were in obstinate and arrogant rejection, and you are committing fasad on earth, meaning that kind of corruption which leads to destruction. فَالْيَوْمَ نُنَجِّيكَ بِبَدَنِكَ, this day I have decided to preserve your physical body, لِتَكُونَ لِمَنْ خَلْفَكَ آيَةً, that when your physical body is discovered, when it resurfaces in history, it will function, listen carefully, as a sign for a people to come after you. وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِنَ النَّاسِ عَنْ آيَاتِنَا لَغَافِلُونَ. But most people are heedless of my signs. So we ask the question, well, the body of Pharaoh was discovered in the year 1897. And we also noted, if we are allowed to think. Would you allow me to repeat that? If we are allowed to think. We noticed that the Zionist movement was also established about the same time. And so we asked the question, what is the sign of Allah that will now unfold in the world for a people to come after Pharaoh? Because now the body has been discovered. And the answer which I gave, and of course they shut the doors on the masjid on me, anytime I think. So the answer which I gave was that the sign is not only that this Quran is absolute truth, and it therefore predicted this event correctly. But more than that, it seems as though I was the only voice to ever voice this explanation, and that's why they hate me. I said the sign is that the history will now repeat itself, and that a people will emerge in history who will live the way Pharaoh lived, who will be people of power, and they will use their power in an arrogant way to oppress the way Pharaoh oppressed. And they will oppress the people who worship the one God. And these people who will now appear in history are the Zionists. And it is the state of Israel that they will establish, which will become the new Pharaoh. And they will be oppressing the people who worship Allah, and these are Orthodox Christians and Muslims. And I said that the sign is that a people who live and who oppress the way Pharaoh did will die the way Pharaoh died. And of course, anytime I offer an explanation of the Quran, which is not located in the tafsir, they shut the doors of the masjid on me. It's not only the masajid which are shutting their doors on me now. The Islamic bookshops around the world refuse to carry my books. That's the pathetic state in which we are today. So now then, that was in 1897. And my student in Sweden asked me to speak on the year 1917. I asked the question, why is it that I have to be a lonely voice doing this work? I may not be in this world for long again. I'm now in 85 years of age by the moon. And it is time for my students, I have many students, I thank Allah for that, to learn to read history. The way you read the stars, to connect the stars to be able to locate direction, so too you must connect events in history in order to be able to read and understand the movement of history. And so now then, it was in 1897 that the Zionist movement was established in Basel, Switzerland. And therefore, the world will now witness a series of events unfolding in the world, which will culminate the way that event culminated underneath the sea, in the Red Sea, with Pharaoh declaring his fate after having rejected the faith all his life. And Pharaoh then believing in the one God, and that whatever he had done to the Israelite people was unjust and he going to pay the price for it. So too history will now end with the state of Israel and its supporters realizing at the very end of history that they were taken for a ride. And they're now going to suffer the same fate that Pharaoh suffered. And that it is those who they were oppressing, they had the truth. And they will die knowing they're going into the hellfire. So the Zionist movement is the beginning of the last stage of history. That the timeline of events in the last phase of history commences with the birth of the Zionist movement. Good. In 1902, we saw the conference in Paris, which my students must study and research, when all the forces in opposition to the Ottoman Empire, which together with the Zionists, met in Paris to plot the overthrow of the Ottoman Empire. The period 1902 to 1908 is extremely important to study when we now have something called color revolutions, because that was a color revolution. How did they do it? In just 6 short years, they were able to bring down the regime of Sultan Abdul Hamid. and take power in the Ottoman Empire in just 6 years. How did they do it? It is such a subject for research. But then we also had something else happening. About the same time that they were able to take control of the Ottoman Empire, and Sultan Abdul Hamid, had to flee. I think he went to Switzerland. Britain and France also then set a trap for Russia. Yes, that's right. They set a trap for Russia. I think it was 1907. I'm lecturing without any notes. I'm lecturing just from memory. That they invited Russia to join with them in what was known as the Triple Alliance. And if you join with us to oppose Germany and the Ottoman Empire is the sick man of Europe. And there's a war which we are planning, which is coming. And when that war takes place and the Ottoman Empire collapses, we will give you Constantinople. And Russia, innocent Russia, fell for the trap. We'll see how in October the 7th, 2023, they set another trap. And another people fell for the trap. History was only repeating itself. And so the Russians accepted the offer, and the Triple Alliance came into being, and now they're just waiting for something to catch the fire for the Great War to take place. This is the first Great War. Great War, the World War. And it took place, it took so long, from 1907 to 1914. That is 7 years it took. It's a long period of time. They're plotting and plotting and plotting for the war to take place, as we are now witnessing the same thing for the Great War to take place, that is the nuclear war. And in 1914, with an act of state terrorism, because the actors involved were states, and they used individuals as guinea pigs, and they were able to succeed in the assassination of the Grand Duke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo. It's beautiful Sarajevo, which is known as the New Jerusalem. And with the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, events now just began to unfold one after the other inexorably, which led to the First World War. And in that First World War, Russia is doing the bulk of the fighting, and Russia is suffering the most from the war. Britain and France are not suffering as much. And so it's easy to exploit the suffering of the Russian people. And that is what they did in 1917, when we saw the first of the events of 1917 taking place. And that was the Bolshevik Revolution. It was engineered from the West, the Zionist West. Yes, Lenin was sent by Wall Street, yes, to Moscow. And when the the Bolshevik Revolution took place in 1917, then the Russian army was just an arm's length away from Constantinople. Up to that time, the city was still known as Constantinople. And then when the Bolshevik Revolution took place, the Tsar and his entire family, who were all pious Christians, that is why they hated him, because he and his family were all pious Christians, and they were a heathen people, a pagan people, parading as Christians. That's why they hated him, they despised him, and they were all assassinated. The entire family was assassinated. And then the new government that took over Russia, which was a Zionist government, the Bolshevik government, then because the Russian army was just an arm's length away from Constantinople, and neither Britain nor France ever wanted Russia to get Constantinople. This was insincerity in international relations. What they did was to get the Bolshevik government in Russia to pull Russia out of the war. And so the Russian army had to retreat and could not take Constantinople, and this was success for all their evil plans. But that's not the only thing that happened in 1917, when Russia was duped and there was a color revolution in Russia, and they took control of Russia. This is not the only thing. This event of 1917 then led to the Soviet Union being born, a godless atheist state. But they planned their plans and Allah planned His plans. And the Soviet Union, which waged war for something like 6 to 7 decades, waged war on Christianity, that is Orthodox Christianity, and waged war on Islam, killing priests, killing Muslim imams and so on, shutting down the cathedrals, shutting down the masajid, stopping the institutions which taught the religion. This is what the Soviet Union did for 6 to 7 decades. But the Soviet Union also rapidly transformed Russia from an agrarian economy, from a social system based on serfdom, which is like a form of slavery, into a scientifically and technologically modern state, capable of producing people who are educated scientifically and technologically, equal to anyone else in the world. And that Soviet Union took Russia into the nuclear age. Russia became a nuclear power like the United States. And therefore there were two superpowers in the world. And the Soviet Union, when it has accomplished its mission, then folded its tent mysteriously and disappeared into the darkness of the night. As soon as that happened, Russia began its journey back to its religious heart, back to its spiritual heart, back to the Orthodox Christian faith. Why is it that Imran Hosein has to be the only one teaching this subject in the world of Islam? What is wrong with our scholarship? When Russia began this journey back to her Orthodox Christian heart, nobody in the world of Islam recognized it. No Darul Ulum recognized it. No Maulana, no Sheikh, none recognized it. But communist China recognized it. Communist China was the first country to recognize the significance, the epochal significance of the change which had taken place in Russia. The two communist parties were hostile to each other, the one in Moscow and the one in Beijing. But now that's gone. And China now welcomed the change in Russia. And with amazing speed, before the West could blink their very eyes, China had reached out to this Russia to build the beginnings of a friendship and alliance which is now today rocking the Zionist world. We have to give credit to the brilliance of the Chinese leadership, who acted brilliantly and swiftly at that time. The alliance which emerged between China and Russia has become the most formidable threat to the power of the modern West ever since the emergence of modern Western civilization. And this began in 1917 with the birth of the Bolshevik Revolution and then the birth of the Soviet Union, etc. But something else happened in 1917, and that is that the British Empire had conquered India, and India was a land of large numbers of people. But the British there were Hindus and there were Muslims in India. And these two large communities had been living fairly peacefully with each other. We never saw large fighting going on between them, although there was quite some animosity by the Hindus for Muslim rule over India for so many centuries. But when the British recognized that they had to leave, because Indian nationalism, both Hindu as well as Muslim, was making it impossible for Britain to continue to rule over India. And so, when the First World War took place, Britain turned to India for manpower to help her in the fighting. They not only used Russia as a guinea pig to do the bulk of the fighting, but they also looked for Indians to use them as guinea pigs as well. The Hindu-Indian National Congress was more hostile to British rule and more vociferous in seeking independence from British rule than the Muslims of India, who sought friendship and alliance with Britain as a means of strengthening their hands against the Hindus. This is the mistake that the leaders of the Indian Muslim community made. And so the leaders of the Indian Muslim community facilitated thousands and thousands of Punjabi Muslims to go and join the British Army fighting in the First World War, to their eternal shame and disgrace. That does not mean the Hindus didn't do the same. Oh yes, Mahatma Gandhi, and he was a great man indeed, but he also cut some corners. Gandhi, who was the exponent of the ahimsa, the theory of ahimsa, by peaceful means, we must change society. No violence, no violence. The same Gandhi who had been proclaiming ahimsa, he went around village after village in India with a drum beater beating with him, trying to recruit people to fight in the British Army, to his eternal shame and disgrace as well. And so when the British Army was fighting the Ottoman Empire, there were many loyal, stupid Muslims fighting in the army with them, loyal to the British Empire, because they had only peanuts in their head. I don't think anything has changed for all of this time. You still have so many Muslims that only have peanuts in their head and are incapable of understanding the world as it was unfolding at that time. And the British Army then was successful with Muslims fighting loyally and stupidly in that army, led by, what was his name now, General Allenby, in conquering Jerusalem and defeating the Ottoman Empire, which was in control of Jerusalem. About the same time, I don't know whether it is after this was probably October 1917, about the same time, either before or shortly after, I don't know which one. You can do the research and find out very easily. The British government then issued the Balfour Declaration in 1917 that it is the intention of the British government to establish this Zionist state in Israel, in the Holy Land, and therefore plant this seed of poison that will reverberate for years to come, and history will end with this seed emerging as a poisonous tree in history. That was 1917. Then we also had, apart from the defeat of the Ottoman Empire, the victory of General Allenby, who when he entered into Jerusalem, he said, "Today the Crusades have ended," explaining therefore to the people that while Britain was a secular state, and modern Western civilization was a secular civilization, arguing until infinity that you must keep politics and religion separate from each other. The same Britain had abandoned that secularism and was fighting the Crusades. Crusades which were wars started by a pope in Rome. These are holy wars. So what is Britain doing fighting a holy war? And yet General Allenby said, when British army conquered Jerusalem, he said, "Today the Crusades had ended." In other words, Britain had simply thrown dust in the eyes of the world. And they had argued that all that we are doing is to try to give a home to a people without a home. That's all. That was a monstrous lie, comparable to 9/11. They tell lies upon lies upon lies. They have a PhD in telling lies. Not at all. The plan was never to simply give a home to a people without a home. Rather, the plan was to bring the Jews back to Jerusalem, to reclaim it as their own, and to establish a state of Israel in Jerusalem, and to then get that state of Israel to establish a Pax Judaica, which will replace Pax Americana, the way that Pax Americana replaced Pax Britannica. All of these things happened in 1917. Shortly after the declaration of the Balfour Declaration, must have been November 1917, and the British Army conquering Jerusalem, we see the League of Nations in Geneva handing over control of the Holy Land to Britain and calling it a British mandate. The rest of history is your job. What I have done here today is to show you the pivotal importance of the events which occurred in 1917. Before I end, our Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, is sitting with his companion Mu'az ibn Jabal. And he gives to Mu'az ibn Jabal a timeline of events which will unfold at the end of history. And he said to Mu'az that when Jerusalem is center stage, then Medina will be in forlorn desolation. At that time, the next event that will occur would be the Great War, that the Christian and Jewish eschatology call Armageddon, and Islamic eschatology refers to as the Malhama. Then after the Great War takes place, and in that war 99% of all those who fight will be killed. according to our Prophet. In that great war after it, the next event that will occur, and that's why the Turkish people hate me, I can't visit Turkey, is because he prophesied that the Muslim army will now conquer Constantinople. Those who have only peanuts in their head, they say, no, the conquest of Constantinople took place in 1453, when the Ottoman Empire conquered Constantinople. These are people who have absolutely nothing in their head except peanuts. The conquest of Constantinople, prophesied by Prophet Muhammad والسلام, is only one conquest he prophesied, and it was going to take place after the Malhama. And the Malhama has not as yet taken place, except for those stupid people who declare it already took place in 1453. And so now then, the timeline of events is that after the Great War, then the conquest of Constantinople will take place. And because I have suggested, and I can be wrong, but I have the right to offer a view, I can be right as well. If I am right, they can do what they want, the caravan will keep on moving. If I am right, you can do what you want, the caravan will keep on moving. Even after I die, the caravan will keep on moving, if I am right. If I'm wrong, tomorrow I'll be forgotten. So just wait and see. I have said the reason why a Muslim army will conquer Constantinople is because the Ottoman Empire committed great sins and great crimes, war crimes. And they inflicted horrendous punishment and evil on the Orthodox Christian people, all in the name of Islam, to extend the frontiers of Islam, bogusly. Because I say this, they hate me. That's right. And so I said that when the Ottoman Empire conquered Constantinople in 1453, they violated Allah's law in the Quran. I don't have the time to explain it. Go read my book, Constantinople in the Quran. And I said, when they conquered Constantinople, they converted Hagia Sophia, which is the most important cathedral in the Christian world outside of Jerusalem, and which had functioned in that capacity for more than 1,000 years. They sinfully, disgracefully transforms Hagia Sophia from a Christian cathedral to a Muslim masjid, to the eternal shame and disgrace of the Ummah of Muhammad ﷺ. Mine is the only voice. No one else is speaking like this. That's why they hate me. That's why they shut their doors of the masjid on me. I said, this is the reason why a Muslim army will conquer Constantinople, to try to make amends, to heal the wounds that occurred because of Ottoman oppression. But when we conquer Constantinople, we will return Hagia Sophia to those to whom it rightfully belongs. And that will bring about a change of the heart of the Orthodox Christian people, who hitherto may be wavering whether or not they should be friends with us. But the Quran has prophesied that there will be a Christian people and a Jewish people who will eventually believe in the one God and who will believe in the Quran as the Word of God. And I have suggested that this is one of the reasons why it will happen, because the events which will occur when we declare we are going to return Hagia Sophia to you helps them to now look at the Quran differently and to accept the Quran as the Word of God. So we don't go as stupid fools with boxing gloves to try to debate the Christians. Oh, we won the debate. But we leave that for fools, not for us. Alhamdulillah, we can see a change already taking place in the Orthodox Christian world. So now then, this is the timeline of events. He said after the conquest of Constantinople, then you'll witness the Khuruj of Dajjal. Dajjal will appear in human form. 1917 is the moment when we see the emergence of Jerusalem to become center stage in the world commencing. This is all I have to say to you in this important brief video on 1917. I hope that you'll be able to now take up what I have done and go to 1944 and do the same thing with international monetary economics in the Bretton Woods Accord. And then in 1945, the birth of the International Monetary Fund. Do the same thing in 1952 when we see the passage from Pax Britannica spectacularly moving to Pax Americana, when Eisenhower informed Britain and France, you must withdraw from Suez. And then we see in 1971, September, when the birth of the petrodollar took place. And now we see the spectacular success of Israel in setting a trap for the Islamic resistance in Gaza, and then getting all these drones and state-of-the-art weapons into Gaza. Who brought it there? Because people who have only peanuts in their heads say, oh, no, Santa Claus brought it for us, and we can now wage war on Israel. And now Israel is exploiting the events of October 2023 to bring Pax Judaica into being. You must be able to read history this way. Thank you.